Hello.
When your mind is
Good evening, Graham. Good evening, Anthony. And
Hello.
well, it's with great sadness tonight, Graham. Really, that we open with the death of one of our former guests, Heath Common, who we were delighted to feature on, as I say, on a previous episode. And Graham, I knew Heath, but you knew him very well indeed. And if we could really start with your tribute to him, you wrote a wonderful piece that's in the Harrogate Advertiser. I would draw everyone's attention to please reading that. But Graham,
Apart from being a great bloke and very good at everything he did, including writing for melody maker, recording music albums, spoken word, beatnik poetry, and art, he was the one of the few living links to the whole American beatnik scene of the 50s and 60s, and to the more sort of Ladbroke Grove, Powys, what the hell it was called in London,
yeah,
of the late 60s, late 60s, early 70s.
mm,
That sort of freak scene. He was like one of the last living links to that. And he sadly had been in hospital for months and months and
yeah,
months. And I've seen it a couple of times since he went in, but it was
mm,
all very private, quite rightly so.
yeah,
And I last saw him on last Wednesday, and I took him a book. And I knew he couldn't hold a book, such was his condition, but I thought his wife Honor might be able to read it to him. It's quite a short book. It's that
yeah,
new book by Robin Hitchcock,
yeah,
1967, How I Got There and Why I Never Left,
mm,
on Little Brown Books. And I inscribed it to a creative genius who saw beyond the everyday. A book by a creative genius who saw beyond the everyday, or
mm,
something to those effects. So I inscribed it and gave it to him, and he saw it, and he was really chuffed. And I had a great conversation because the previous time he'd seemed really, really ill. This time he's very thin, but
yeah, yeah,
we talked about for 40 minutes about politics and
mm,
music and
mm,
poetry. It was just like talking to him in the pub or
yeah, yeah,
being in Bud Cafe in Harrogate. And I
mm,
went away and sadly died less than 2 days later in Harrogate Hospital,
yes,
which quite
mm,
shocked me. And
yeah, yeah,
I'm sure his family probably
mm,
knew it was coming,
yeah,
but I didn't. So it was
no,
pretty horrendous. So
mm,
if the listeners bear with me, this is what I wrote in the Harrogate Advertiser
yeah,
within an hour of hearing the news,
yeah,
because I think he deserves it. He's a really important figure, a cult figure rather than a famous
yes,
figure, but
yeah,
no less important for that. So I wrote, one of Harrogate's most notable creative figures of the last 50 years has died. A cult figure for decades at a national level in music, poetry, art, and journalism, the multi-talented Heath Common passed away in Harrogate Hospital after a lengthy brave battle against illness, in which his spirits always remained high, a mark of the caliber of the man. This fiercely intelligent, independent, and charismatic creative artist, who was as equally at home in the world of chocolate pops as the avant-garde, was successful in so many areas and walks of life that he counted Marquis Smith, P.P. Arnold, and Bill Nelson among his diverse circle of friends. In recent years, the former teacher and dedicated Leeds United fan recorded for leading independent label High Forehead Records, where he combined the flair for memorable rock melodies with well-crafted and incisive beatnik poetry enthralled to the genius of Ginsberg, Burroughs, and Ferlinghetti.
mhm,
Once described as the Northern Kevin Ayers, even in his final months in Harrogate, he not only remained positive, he also released new music. His final days saw a new collaboration with Drusilla Verney, former member of 70s psych rock act Here and Now, an offshoot of the legendary prog band Gong. Called The World Is On Fire, so good was the official video for this stunning track, which addressed our planet in deep peril, that it was premiered only a week ago at the prestigious Portobello Film and Art Festival in London. Yorkshireman Heath, also known as Jeremy Byford, had begun his career in music and spoken word in New York City with Robert Lockwood and Johnny Shines, the stepson and close friend, respectively, of the legendary blues musician Robert Johnson. Well-travelled geographically as well as intellectually, he went on to work in the years to come with a wide range of notable musicians, including American guitarist John Fahey and hit late 1980s, early 1990s British indie dance act, the Rhythm Sisters. He also wrote for leading music leading British music papers, including The Melody Maker, where he wrote articles about the likes of the Stone Roses. Recent years saw him perform on stage in Hebden Bridge in 2021 in a new show, Kerouac Lives, a stunning multimedia tribute inspired by the 100th anniversary of Jack Kerouac's birth, featuring conversation, readings, poetry, and new songs, put together by Leeds University academic and author Simon Warner, Northern songwriter John Hardy, and Heath himself. Like everything else, the now sadly late Heath Common did in his creative life, it was full of passion and intelligence, and presented a view of the world above the plane of the everyday and the petty. Although not someone particularly happy to suffer fools, he was always generous, friendly, and open. Incredibly kindly, he worked with this writer in several music events in Harrogate, usually in collaboration with local independent galleries, Red House Originals, and 108 Fine Art. He remained a fervent devotee of beat culture to the end, even as life itself finally defeated him. Heath Common is survived by his wife, Honor, who was with him throughout his months in hospital, even in his most trying times, and his daughter, Ella. And that's what I wrote for the Harrogate Advertiser.
Well, beautifully put, Graham. I mean, it's absolutely superb appraisal of him. And of course, we interviewed him around the time of that he was doing the Jack Kerouac work, and that's a fitting tribute, Graham. And so I think we need to say no more than that. You put it perfectly. And God bless Heath, and thank you for being a Heath uncommon rather than a Heath common in many ways. So, but with the common touch as well in how he communicated. So, Graham, some rather joyous news by contrast this week, or last week even, that left the band concerned pretty much speechless on the stage. Covered live by BBC Six Music was the announcement of this year's Mercury Music Prize winner. And I think it's hugely significant that English Teacher won, a band that has its roots in the Leeds Conservatoire. And it's one of those albums that we've mentioned, a grower of an album, really. And I think it's tremendous that they've won. First Leeds victory since, well, here's a quiz question. When did Leeds last win, if I'm right?
I don't think we have.
Alt J.
Alt J won. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, half the band is from Leeds, and one member is from Harrogate, and one member wasn't from Leeds or Harrogate. Yeah. Although the band lineup's changed, so they're no longer quite as Leeds or quite as Harrogate.
No, but they were sufficiently enough to be called a winner from Leeds. And I think I like your thoughts here in how you previewed this by saying recognizing Leeds as a music city. And that, I think, is significant too. We tend to feel Leeds, as we've said in many a times, ends up playing second fiddle to Manchester and third fiddle to Liverpool and fourth fiddle to Sheffield.
And fifth fiddle to Glasgow.
And fifth fiddle we could go on. And in some ways,
10th fiddle to Inverness.
That would be fair enough. But I think a combination of, well, I mean, what a bill it was actually in Leeds just a few weeks ago at Leeds Millennium Square when Yard Act played, and so did English Teacher as a support act. And we've mentioned Yard Act as well. And so these are two significant Leeds bands that have been garnering national attention. And I suppose the most direct question to ask, what made English Teacher the Mercury Music Prize winners? And what does that say about Leeds?
Well, apart from the fact this Be Texas is a very good album, I think it's partly that it had a huge impact within people who care about these things straight away when it was released earlier this year.
Yeah.
But I think another reason is that I think Mercury doesn't like to be predictable. So after a few years of having no guitar bands winning, you almost had to have a guitar band winning just to shock everybody. And they couldn't do the Last Dinner Party, even though their album sold more copies than English Teacher or Yard Act, because they're very flouncy and girly and wear long white dresses some of the time. And you know, they're sort of like, even though they're not mainstream, they're more mainstream than English Teacher, in the perfect position, just at the right time to win the award. And it was good to see. And you know, they thanked Hyde Park Book Club for supporting them, and they also thanked Brudenell Social Club.
I mean, prodigiously thanked Brudenell. They really did.
Nathan, the brilliant promoter, who's done so much work for Leeds over the last 20, 25 years and runs the Brudenell Social Club, they thanked him by name, which is quite extraordinary. And
Yeah.
it was quite moving because a long time ago when I did Charm Magazine and Charm Gigs in Leeds, New York and Harrogate,
Yeah.
Leeds had been trying to get its name forward as a indie music town from about 96 onwards.
Yeah.
And they were pushing and pushing and pushing. And the only result of that really was the Kaiser Chiefs, including Bailey Ray, who'd been in the band called Helen that I used to review. And then there was full English teacher who emerged and won the Mercury Prize. And it's like, this has been coming for 25 years. Leeds has deserved this recognition for a long, long time. And Dave Simpson, who was also on our show, the Guardian music writer, he also wrote about the Mercury Prize and he was chuffed as hell that Leeds had been recognised.
Right, and rightly so. I think. I think we've often said that Leeds doesn't. Leeds tends to shrug its shoulders, whereas Manchester gives it the look at me, and Leeds has always been quite the reverse of that. It's never been look at me. Yeah, it's what you're looking at.
If the Eiffel Tower had been designed by someone from Leeds and had actually been built in Leeds and then erected in Leeds, there would have been no say about it whatsoever. It just appeared one day, and the locals go, "What's that? That looks pretty good," and that'd be it, and move on.
Yeah. I mean, the tendency is to play down, isn't it? But I actually think that's interesting creatively because it means, I think it means that Leeds, it takes more getting into the music in Leeds. I think you have to work a little bit harder with it.
Yeah, I mean, Yorkshire doesn't give up its glories easily.
No.
You have to work for everything in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And everybody
there are
in
exceptions
Yorkshire does work for whatever.
There are Kaiser Chiefs is
it's the same with music. The Gang of Four, brilliant Leeds band.
That's
the Gang of Four aren't an easy band to like immediately, but they're a great band.
Nor a wedding
at Leeds University. And other bands you have to work a bit. Exactly.
I mean, there are. I mean, Kaiser Chiefs you don't have to work hard with, and it's fair to say that Chumbawamba's greatest hits you certainly didn't have to work hard with. But there are other pieces, they're political pieces, more so.
Well, we are generalizing here, but the thing about generalizing is it's generally true.
That's a very good definition of generalizing. So, Graham, there's our thoughts on English Teacher. We should just actually mention what the album's called. Off the top of my head, I'm embarrassingly not able to remember.
This could be Texas.
That's exactly it. That's why I couldn't remember it.
Yeah. The album is surreally political, so it's sort of political, but in a surreal fashion, so it doesn't hit you over the head with a mallet.
No. So that's joyful news. Now, I'm off to see the new film Lee on Saturday night, and alarmingly, you're already suggesting that I should be going to see Blink Twice instead. And Blink Twice, made by a famous surname.
Well, it's by Zoe Kravitz, daughter of Lenny, and this is her first director's piece, and it's very good, despite what some critics have said.
So now I got a bit nervous about seeing it because it's described as from the horror genre, but not necessarily directly a horror movie. Am I just wimping out? And should I just grow up and go and see it?
Yeah. Did you see Jordan Peele's Get Out?
No, but I've heard comparisons with that. Obviously,
it's very similar to that in the sense.
I thought it might be.
It doesn't start off as a horror movie, and it only really becomes a horror movie at the end, very much like Get Out.
Yes.
Whereas Get Out is about race. Blink Twice is about gender, about misogyny, sexism.
So a very topical issue.
Exactly, yeah. But the good thing about it is it may not be the world's deepest, most philosophical analysis of the relation of the sexes and misogyny of terrible men, because it's inspired by Harvey Weinstein, and Channing Tatum plays a social media giant who's charming as hell, probably much more charming than Harvey Weinstein, who has his own tropical island, a bit like Love Island, with a whole posse of women that he invites to come along with these male chums. And these male chums have some amazing actors there. I mean, they've got like Levon Hawke, who turns out to be Ethan Hawke's son.
Really?
In real life. So, and they've also got Haley Joel Osment, who I last saw in AI, this Steven Spielberg film in about 2000, who's now grown up and he's chubby with a beard, and he's very good at it. So it's a great cast of characters. So what's good about the film is that it does address the Me Too thing, but it doesn't in a way that if you couldn't care less about the ideas behind the film, it's gripping from start to finish. You don't know what's going to happen. It's shocking. It's well acted. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's just a good film. It doesn't require you to regard it as a work of genius, to recognize the fact it's a really good film. Whereas about Lee Miller, the famous pioneering female war photographer and also fashion photographer, Vogue magazine, that is really deep, philosophical. It's worth seeing because the story itself is very important. And it is quite a good film. But if you take away the meaning of the film and the ideas of the film, it isn't as good a film. It's not as compelling, isn't as convincing, doesn't 100% work like Blink Twice does or Get Out did in the past. So it's a sort of film that if you saw it on television, you'd think, that's a good film.
Is it more documentary in style?
It's very factually based because the director, Ellen Kuras, who suggested the idea of the film to Kate Winslet, the star of the film, was Lee Miller. In the first place, she's known for winning awards for documentaries.
Exactly.
And the script was sort of co-written with Anthony Penrose, who's the son of Roland Penrose, who's actually a real character in the film.
Yeah.
And so he kept his eye over the script to make sure it was factually accurate. Yeah. So I think it's a factual representation of what happened involving Lee Miller and the Second World War and the horrors of Nazism and the death camps. It's very credible. It's credible and credible, but the actual drama of it and the characters isn't so good because Kate Winslet is slightly miscast. She's slightly miscast herself as Lee, and Alexander Skarsgård, who plays Roland Penrose, the very English in real life surrealist
his interpretation.
He was a very important art critic, very influential for many years. He's got a very unconvincing English accent as Alexander Skarsgård, and he's basically too glamorous to be Roland Penrose.
Even the name Roland Penrose is not glamorous, is it, as a name?
No.
So now, why then is Kate Winslet being tipped for Oscar nominations? Because she's Kate Winslet?
It's a Me Too film. There's a lot of references in the film to how men treat women, which are all true.
Yeah.
But it focuses on that almost to the exclusion of other themes you could have had in the Second World War, because essentially it is about the Second World War. And so I think that alone makes it more Oscar worthy because that's still an important cultural theme in terms the real world is the Me Too movement. And also it's Kate Winslet. How many good films is she made? So many good films. And the Oscars respects people who are successful and who are good, and Kate's good and successful. So I could see why she should be tipped, but I personally think she's not totally right for the role.
In terms, Graham, of how it presents a journalistic photographer, how would it compare with Alex Garland's Civil War?
Better. I think even though Kirsten Dunst, she's a good actress and there was nothing wrong with the performance in Civil War, it was the script. It didn't give her enough to chew on, so to speak. And this film gives Kate plenty to chew on. So I think, bizarrely, even though I've just criticised Kate Winslet and the film, it's a more rounded portrayal of the effect the real world has on a war photographer than Civil War is.
I'm going to generalize here, but my recollection is that Lee Miller, associated with black and white photography, is this film shot in black and white? The poster's black and white. What about the film?
No, it isn't. And I think it might actually be better if it had been. But no, it isn't. No. But you can tell that I don't totally agree with the casting about the best thing is Josh O'Connor, who's not even in it that much. He's
something of the rising star at the moment, isn't he? Josh O'Connor?
Well, yeah, he's got those spangly eyes that you can't stop looking at. So I can see why he's been successful.
Yeah, he's one to keep the eye on. He's the new Daniel Day-Lewis, they reckon. So, well, I'm joining in that.
I'm not sure. He's not really grappled with big, deep, dark characters yet.
That's the
Whereas
next
Daniel
thing.
Day-Lewis, that's his meat and drink.
Well, we'll see. I think he's on the way to doing that kind of thing. Now, Graham, I feel it's time for an interruption.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say that the Ken Scott Q&A, the legendary producer of David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust and engineer of many Beatles records, the late 60s, and many other hit albums. He is definitely doing a Q&A for the Vinyl Sessions charity event that I talk at in
Yes.
Harrogate.
You were having
And he's
to
doing it
change the
on
date of
Wednesday,
it.
October the 9th. And well, bizarrely, they've changed the date just to suit me,
That's
which is,
fantastic. Graham, you're
I
more
don't know.
important than
Is it good? I think it is, yeah.
Ken. That's
It's good.
magnificent.
And
So he's
I
fitting in with
definitely
you.
have
That's
no
quite
way to
something,
say this
Graham.
guy's a legend. But he's
Yeah.
going to be talking about. It's a very nice one. Yeah, I know. I'm very touched. But he's doing Supertramp's Crime of the Century, which is
Yeah.
a very good album from the prog rock era, which he produced, and it was their first hit album. And if you listen to their previous two albums that don't have Ken Scott involved,
No.
you can definitely see the difference. So
Yeah.
Ken worked his magic and helped him make that hit album. And I
Yeah.
remember it as a child, and I liked it even then. So I'm looking forward to that.
Mm.
And
Well, I
that'll be
feel
at Starling Barring Cafe, Wednesday, October 9th in Harrogate.
Excellent. Graham, I feel it's still, even though it's an interruption on top of an interruption, if you can just pretend that you interrupted me when I actually wasn't saying anything, why not? Let's have another interruption before we come on to a little one that I want to talk about.
Well, I hate to look too Northern or Scottish because,
Yeah.
I think Britain's a very equal country where there's no regional differences, and London and the South don't hog anything or rule anything. It's all very even Steven. So I'd just like to say that I was quite surprised when the great British bluesman John Mayall,
Yes.
whose band gave their breaks to Eric Clapton, Peter Green, Mick Taylor. So the guy without John Mayall, the great British blues,
There was no British blues scene without John Mayall.
Would scarcely have happened. Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
guess where he's from? Guess where he's from?
He's a
Or
northerner.
was from? Of course, he's from Macclesfield.
Was he?
Unbelievable. Not
I never
London,
knew
but
that.
Macclesfield. Yeah. So there you go. Everything great turns out to be
From the north.
Northern
and
Scottish
further and
Irish,
further north.
and maybe a bit Welsh.
So Graham, I went to see, well, technically there were 4 concerts by Elvis Costello, and this was at Leeds City Varieties Music Hall. And so the way this worked, 50, if I can give it its full title, and I'm probably not going to get this full title correct, 15 songs in 50 years. And the way, I think that's right. And the way it worked, 15 songs from 50 years, forgive me. So Elvis was in the building, the Leeds City Varieties Music Hall building, on the Monday the 2nd and the Tuesday the 3rd of September. And he was there with Steve Nieve, of course, pretty much ever present, pretty much right-hand man, really. Never a Costello show, no matter what band he would do, pretty much always there, I think, Steve Nieve. And so the way that the show worked is that Elvis has just turned 70. I'm not sure what age Steve is, but probably not that far removed in age. And the way the shows worked was that each one set list of 15 songs, and then the next show would follow. So there'd be a show at 7 p.m.
You mean different 15 songs?
Yes. So you'd have a show at 7 p.m.
Chronological order?
No. And that so not chronological. But the way that it worked, he wanted to cover songs of his from all the decades that he'd been writing songs. So he made sure to cover, all the bases, all the career. And so 7 o'clock and then 9:30 each night. So I went to the 7 o'clock show on the Tuesday night. So I saw just the one show out of the 4. And I must thank Ian Syme, general manager of Leeds Grand Theatre, and overall in charge of Leeds City Varieties as well, for the chance to go and see this. Obviously sold out every performance, as you would expect. Just the 2 of them on stage, and Elvis would move between different guitars, then would perhaps go and play piano, as well as Steve playing keyboards.
So we're talking no drums whatsoever?
No drums.
And no bass?
No drums, no bass. But so the way that it would work is that Elvis, as he's wont to do, as is in the style of Billy Bragg, is to as much tell stories now as to sing. And one of the revelations was he could easily have been born in Leeds. There was this possibility. What had happened is that his father was performing.
That'd be much better.
Well, I think his father, who of course sang with big bands, was in Leeds, and I think Elvis's mother was in Leeds at the time, but they moved on and shortly before. But if they'd stayed that particular week, he says he could have been born the son of Chapel Fields, Leeds. So
would have been a Yorkshireman.
Yeah, so he mulled over the thoughts that he could have been a son of Leeds, and he recalls going to there anyway, and that It was he said it was a diet either of, I think he said it would be salt fish was one possibility, and another form of dried fish was the other. So that was his recollections of Leeds.
Was he in Norway or Leeds?
Was he what?
Was he in Norway or Leeds?
Leeds. I think probably. I'm imagining the two forms of fish in Leeds at the time would have been fish from the Jewish community and fish from the Caribbean community. So those would be the two types of fish that he'd be referring to.
Is he portraying Leeds as poorer somewhere than Liverpool?
Say again, Graham.
Is he portraying Leeds as being a little bit poorer than Liverpool?
Well, I don't think that was the intention of that. Just that his recollections of what was being eaten there. I think probably from a Jewish culture or from or more likely from a Caribbean culture at the time. You know. So with many of the songs, he would illustrate with stories as to how the songs came about, the roots of them, or who he played with on them, or what show that he did. So he'd talk about being doing lip service, for example, that he played. He'd talk about being on Top of the Pops with
of this year's model.
Yeah, and how, you know, he remembers having a face full of spots at the time. But he talks about how he was sort of aggressively attacking the camera in the way he was singing. He said, but of course it was all being mimed anyway. But he said, you know, it was that thing of still looking like you were giving 100% to doing it. There were songs that were, shall we say, obscure, but then that's because, you know, to listen.
Well, he's done an awful lot of albums.
This is the thing. He's done so many albums. He's done so many albums and so many different styles with the albums. The cover version of The Night that he did was the one that was actually, if you go onto Spotify, the song that seems to come up first under Elvis Costello. It seems very unfair that it's She that comes up as the first song, not, you know, which goodness, I mean, I know it was in no, it was it Notting Hill that it featured in?
I think it was not. I never liked that version, not because Elvis is singing isn't good. It's just She's such an over-the-top song. Yeah, I'll never forget Charles Aznavour, the French singer, singing it. We sang it. Elvis is so rich. It's a bit like Rich Pot at the time.
Yeah, and so that was late on in the set. But there were songs that I know that weren't there.
What was your favourite? What was the 2 or 3 best songs you did in terms of versions?
It was I suppose a case of I didn't particularly, you know, it wasn't that I wanted to hear familiar songs, and so actually that's the thing that I enjoyed about it most was seeing and hearing how he did lesser known pieces, if you like, but the way that he committed beautifully to it. So my favorite was actually the opening song, which was When I Was Cruel, and just the way that he used the way in that song that it wasn't that he was using sound effects with it. It was just that he used his voice particularly well in that, how he used space within that song very well. It was an extended version of it. And so that actually was my favorite song of the evening. So not a song that's necessarily hugely familiar. And I like the fact that, you know, it was quite rare for him to play any of the hits.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.